Welcome to Calls. This is the 2021 Barracuda Championship full show. As you all probably know, and if you don't, this is an alternate field event for PGA Tour professionals instead of the WGC, or for those who didn't qualify for the WGC St. Jude. The Barracuda is played in Reno or Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and this year it is played at the Old Greenwood course. And we'll dig into that here in a second. It's actually a new venue, so a lot of information to get to there, and a lot of information to get to in general, as I'm trying to fit the initial research, data dive, and DFS tactics for the Barracuda all in one show. It's no secret that I am a proponent of these alternate field events for betting. I think your value for betting cards comes in these alternate field events with a lot of the attention at the main events, say the WGC this week or the Open Championship week. We hit the Barbasol winner. There's a lot of value to be gained in these alternate field events, and especially this week with not a lot of data available. Something like Fantasy National is going to be instrumental in helping you find the statistics and the values that you need to hit the winners. So as always, Fantasy National provides all stats. Fantastic resource. If you haven't checked it out, I don't know what else to tell you. It's what allows me to be as successful as I am, as little successful as I am, but I am somewhat successful so far, and been using Fantasy National. Couldn't do it without it. The only other announcement, as always, chat is open. Right in there, let me know what you're wanting to see, what you're thinking for the Barracuda. If you just want some general information, hopefully we can answer that this evening. My links to social media are below. That's where I'll have the official betting card for the WGC and the Barracuda for the week. So without any further ado, we got a lot to get into. Let's check out the Barracuda Championship. And we'll move over here, and this is the homepage or basic stat model for the Barracuda at Fantasy National. I have set it at 24 rounds, and then sorted by strokes gained total. And Brandon Grace is the number one strokes gained player in the field this week. But before we get into too much of that information, let me bring up chat here and the DraftKings Sportsbook, so I'm ready to go. Let's just take a look at it, some general information about the Barracuda Championship. So the course is Old Greenwood in Truckee, California. And the first thing that you would note is actually at this bottom bullet here. The course is located just below 6,000 feet. So in a course that is above a mile high, above sea level, the ball's going to travel. The ball's going to go a long way, or a longer way than it would on a normal course. So when you look at the length of this course, it is certainly plays shorter than the yardage would suggest. So keep that in mind when you see some of the length of these holes here at Old Greenwood. Some basic information. This is a Jack Nicklaus design, which is going to be great for Fantasy National because that is a filter we can use. So we can check and see who plays Jack Nicklaus course as well. Old Greenwood is actually a par 72 setup, but for the Barracuda, they convert a par 5 into a long par 4. And full disclosure, I don't know which hole that is because this is a new venue. We'll bring up the Pro Visualizer here in a little bit, and you'll see the yardage charts for Old Greenwood as set up for members or for public play. But for the Barracuda, it is set up as a par 71 that measures a little bit above 7,400 yards. In normal terms, that's a pretty long course. But again, keep in mind that this is above a mile above sea level, so the ball is going to travel a lot further. So this yardage is not indicative to how the course will play. Course statistics: the average green size is about 5,300 square feet. It's a little smaller than the average, but nothing like Pebble Beach or where the WGC is this week at TPC Southwind. Those are very small greens. These are a little bit on the smaller side, but nothing to the extreme. There are 6 water hazards that come into play on different holes. Excuse me, and it will come into play heavily on those holes. A lot of water from drive to green, or from tee to green on the holes that it is. I think a 1 par 3 is got a lot of water in front, so very challenging course with in relation to water. The greens are bent, but with some POA overseed. So we're going to look at some POA statistics for putting, and that's pretty common out west. Earlier this year for the U.S. Open, we looked at POA for Torrey Pines. The Riviera has POA, so pretty common out west. The additional notes here, they had a pretty bad winter apparently, and so a lot of the fairways had to be resodded or grown back in from seed, and there are wild, drastic temperature changes throughout a day. It can go from 30s in the morning to 80s midday. So it's pretty wild conditions for golf, which makes it fun. And we'll see that at least in the wind finder here in the moment, looks pretty interesting, looks pretty fun. So there's the basic setup sheet, tournament fact sheet for the Barracuda here. Pardon me while I bring up a tab for the Pro Visualizer. Go to Old Greenwood. You see Pro Visualizer has all of these courses, which is great. That's another fantastic tool that I use. I'm not going to go through every hole. We got a lot to cover for outright betting and so on. But I do want to highlight this, the yardage charts here as the satellite view tries to load. The front 9 will play to its par 36. Long front 9. You've got an over 600 yard par 5. You've got a couple of longer par 4s that are 489, 493. But again, remember, because of the elevation, they won't play that long. The bigger thing is to keep in mind, because of that elevation, these short par 4s, 384 and 365, they are drivable. These are drivable par 4s. And there's another one on the back. So keep that in mind whenever you're either betting or using playing Barracuda in DFS. Length's going to be a factor, especially those who generally play drivable par 4s well. On the back, we saw on the tournament fact sheet, the back 9 is going to play to a par 35. Well, Pro Visualizer has it at a par 72 or a par 36, overall par 72. I do not know which one of these par 5s is going to be converted. My guess would be this one. My guess is hole 12's the one that's converted to a par 4, but I just, again, full transparency, I don't know. Back 9, you've got another long par 5. This is absolutely drivable here at Old Greenwood. So you've got 3 drivable par 4s on the course. Again, my assumption is this is a long par 4. So 2 long par 4s in a row. A couple of long par 3s, 227 and 232. A very short par 4 here. And a couple of middling par 4s. So I just wanted to bring up the overall, stat view here for what Old Greenwood is set at for public play or members and so on. And we'll get into why I'm having to rely on this here in a bit. But that is the basics of Old Greenwood. And I think that's going to be, I was going to say that was going to be the end of the initial research. However, let's take a look at the wind here real quick. This Truckee Tahoe Airport is legitimately about 5 minutes south of the course. And just look at Thursday. That looks horrendous. I mean, it looks great as a viewer, as somebody who's an absolute asshole and wants to see players deal with, inclement conditions. I'm just glad I'm not playing. Very gusty in the morning, calm winds sustained, but very gusty in the morning, and turning into 30-mile-an-hour gusts and a lot of sustained wind in the afternoon forecasted for Thursday. Again, this is a Tuesday evening. This could change in a couple hours. I have no idea. But looking at what it has here, that's what we've got. So to me, there's a heavy favorite for the Thursday morning wave at the Barracuda as things stand right now, if this truly comes into play. You'll notice that there's absolutely no rain in the forecast at all for any of the 4 days. Friday is absolutely benign. Just perfect golf conditions, a high of 82, high 70s, low 80s. Just a beautiful day for golf, no wind. Saturday kind of kicks up a little bit. Sunday it kicks up in the afternoon a bit. But Thursday's the real challenge, it looks like, if things hold. So that means if this is a favored AM here and there's nothing going on Friday, then that gives me a pretty good inclination that I would favor an AM-PM split if you're when you're playing your DFS lineups for the Barracuda. Target the guys that are going off early on Thursday and late on Friday. Again, you'll want to check back as late as possible on this. It is Truckee Tahoe Airport. If you want to check back later in the week, make it as late as possible, see if the wind is updated and such. But as things stand right now, I would say a pretty heavy favorite of AM and then PM. But that's pretty much it on the initial research. And the reason why I have to go to Pro Visualizer for the course information basically exclusively is this was Old Greenwood was used in 2020 for the Barracuda, but Fantasy National doesn't have the majority of the 2020 stats in there yet. Some 2020, but not all. The former course for the Barracuda Championship was Montreux, I believe I'm saying that right. And things kind of got a little wacky. I believe there were I think there's actually 3 different courses at Montreux. So that's why you have so much data here. And even so, you have just a limited set of data, kind of what it was for Keen Trace for the Barbasol. You did have a little bit of approach shot. You have some approach shot information, relative to par information, and so on. Distance, again, being in the Reno, Tahoe area, the ball's just going to travel a long way or a longer way away. But because there is no information for Old Greenwood, then I am going exclusively off this, and knowing the fact that it's a par 71 thanks to the tournament fact sheet. So I went, and I'm not going to do it here on Pro Visualizer, but I did make a couple of spreadsheets here for you, and let me switch the view real quick for you all. So this is the chart that Fantasy National has for the composition of holes and how many there are and so on. So there are 2 par 3s, the length of 175 to 200, and there are 2 par 3s that are over 225. So again, nothing that you can isolate there and say, all right, I want to really focus on, par threes of this length and whatnot. With an even split like that, I don't put a lot of stock into separating out the par threes. Par fours, you've got one very short one, again, drivable. Two that are, one's about 360, I believe, and the other's about 380, but they're both drivable. So these three are definitely drivable par fours. This one lists at I believe 408. But it's not quite drivable just due to angles and so on. But I mean, you can basically lump this one into here because it's on the shorter end of the 400 to 450 range. So you've got a lot of short par fours, and then you have a couple of very long ones. And again, I have set this as the Pro Visualizer course. So I'm showing 4 par 5s when there's only going to be 3. Again, I'm showing the par 72 because I don't know which par 5 is being converted. So I'm just keeping it at the Pro Visualizer level and those statistics and providing this chart off of that. But the majority of the par 4s are of this length, but I don't think I'm going to isolate that out in the model that I build or any data that I look at. Again, the yardages here are a bit they are misleading just because of the elevation, and I'm going to continue to speak on that. I'll be a broken record, but don't get so caught up in the yardages of the holes. Again, it is so far above sea level that anyone, for example, a baseball fan, knows about Coors Field in Denver, Colorado, how the ball travels there. It's just because it's so high above sea level. Same thing here. The ball's just going to travel. So this is the hole composition chart. And then here I went through hole by hole earlier and tried to determine kind of a rough outline of some approach shot distribution level here. These here were, I believe, one of the par 4s was a forced layup just due to angles and whatnot. The other 3 of this range here were the par 5s where Pro Visualizer assumes that you're not going for the green and 2. You're going to be able to go for the green and 2 on most of these holes. So there's only one. Let me pull up my notes here from earlier. There was only one par 5 that may not be reachable. It was the second hole. It plays to 623 yards. So assuming a 300-yard drive, you would still have to go, I think, 321 to reach the green. Certainly possible, especially with the elevation change. But I would say comfortably that could be a layup hole or a 3-shot par 5. So that's why there's such a significant number of approach shots listed on Pro Visualizer here. The majority look like they come from 175 to 200 here at Old Greenwood. There is a legitimately long par 4 that you are going to have to hit a 200 plus long iron into a green. But mostly it looks like 175 to 200. Again, with these proximities, I'm probably not going to put a lot of stock into them with the elevation change, and this being the first, or the second year that the course is in play for the Barracuda, but with no stats on Fantasy National. I wanted to provide this information to you the best I could, so this is what I have. I don't know if this is going to be very accurate or not. It's what I have to present to you, and you use this information how you see fit. Whether you want to go with it, throw it completely out. I'm not going to say this is right or wrong. It's just the information I have for you. So I wanted to show you all those 2 graphs, that information that I was trying to extrapolate from Pro Visualizer earlier. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of information of how the course is kind of set up and and so on. I'm going to exit out of that. I don't want to save the Excel file. Let me switch to my web page view. One thing that I've forgotten to mention until now, and I should have put this in the introduction, and my apologies. Barracuda is a modified Stableford scoring system. That means it is not complete stroke play. You're going to get bonus points for eagles and birdies, and then get minus points on bogeys and worse and so on. So it's a point system, not a stroke game, or not a stroke play event. It's a scoring system. So make sure we're going to keep that in mind as we go through the Fantasy National strokes gained models and the outright betting DFS, so on. So keep that in mind. Again, I apologize. I meant to bring that up in the intro. Got quick because I know there's a lot to cover. So looking here, coming back to the base model here for the last 24 rounds, Brandon Grace is your overall leader of strokes gained total. And probably no surprise, he's had a pretty good year. He won an alternate field event earlier this year at the Puerto Rico Open. And he's coming in with some pretty darn good form. I mean, he missed the cut at the Open, but he was 7th at the U.S. Open, 4th at the Memorial, made the cut at the PGA. He's in pretty darn good form. His irons are dialed in at the moment. He's playing well around the green. He's been putting well. There's a reason that he is the co-favorite at 16-1. Him and Maverick McNeely are your co-favorites at 16-1. Then you have first and third just by strokes gained total. At 18-1, you have Griot, who has fallen down to 12th here. He's also played in some very tough events, so he's certainly somebody to keep an eye on. He's not very good on polo, which is troubling. He missed the cut at the 3M. He was top 15 at the Open Championship, but a string of bad tournaments here has dropped his strokes gained totals recently. But he's at 18-1. Mito Pereira, somebody who I've been touting quite heavily, and I was brought on to Mito by a subscriber. All the credit there goes to Brandon. Brandon Barger is his name. He had me start looking at Mito pretty closely. And Mito's coming off a very, very good Olympics event. I know he was top 10. He might have been top 5. He was going crazy on Friday and Saturday. You actually have quite a few Olympians here. Mito Pereira, Thomas Peters. I don't think Kadira was there. Grace wasn't there. Van Rooyen wasn't. Oh, maybe it is just those two. I thought there were more. But I see the two Olympians are back to back on the strokes gained board there at 28 and 29. So I thought there were more, but there aren't. So let's try to get a gauge here of what a stat model should look like. Before that, I forgot I was on the odds boards here. So those, Emilio Griot, Mito Pereira, 18-1. Troy Merritt and Gary Woodland are 20-1. So Gary Woodland here, 11th. Troy Merritt, who you might remember at the Rocket Mortgage. Where is Troy Merritt? Should be around here somewhere. He's been playing really well. There he is. He's down here at 33rd. Troy Merritt lost in the playoff to Cam Davis at the Rocket Mortgage, which was great for me because I had Cam Davis. I had 100-1, so I was not too upset to see him get second. But Troy Merritt had been playing fairly well during this stretch in May and June, and then missed the cut at the John Deere, missed the cut at the Open, a rather middling performance at the 3M. He's always been a very good putter, and Poa is his best. So that's something to keep a lookout for. He's also very good in the wind, and Thursday, at least, is supposed to be very, very windy. So that's something else. Troy Merritt is 20-1 as well. Somebody that I've kind of kept an eye on this week. I think it's fair value, maybe even onto the good side, but if you're going to ask me to take either Troy Merritt or Mito Pereira, I'll take Mito at 2 numbers less at 18-1. But still, the overwhelming, or the point that I'm trying to make is there's a lot of value at these alternate field events when you have the co-favorites at 16-1, just like they were at the Barbasol, where Seamus Power and Charles Schwartzel were both 16-1, and Seamus Power ended up winning. Then you go into the second tier or so. Patrick Rogers and Aaron Wise are at 25. Brian Moore's 28-1. Snedeker, Pendrith, Varner, and Thomas Peters are 35-1. You've got Brian Stewart, Ryan Armour, Ches Reavy, Adam Hadwin, and Pat Perez at 40-1. Shank and Hubbard at 45, and a pretty good slew of guys at 50. I don't want to go through the entirety of the odds board, but that'll give you some idea. Sorry, I'm making sure I've got chat up and everything as I'm looking away from the camera. It'll give you an idea of where Vegas thinks the favorites and where they're landing are. But let's see if we can find some value here on Fantasy National for the Barracuda. So the first thing I wanted to look at, let's look at POA greens, and I'm just going to look at POA. I'm going to bring it out to about the last 36, even though POA is the least common surface. We'll do POA for the Barracuda, and you've got Matt Kuchar. Matt Kuchar's in this field? Holy smokes, no way. Matt Kuchar, 65-1. I just realized Matt Kuchar's in this field. Wow. All right. Well, I mean, if you're looking for name value, Matt Kuchar's there, but I mean, I don't think he's been playing all that great lately. But there you go. There's Matt Kuchar. All right. Matt Kuchar is your number 1 putter on POA greens for the last 36 rounds. Him and Snedeker, Wyndham Clark, Brian Stewart, and Maverick McNeely are your top 5. You got Rogers, Michael Kim, Hubbard, Campos, and Teeter are your top 10. If we want to narrow it down, which I probably will, let's just do the last 12, especially because POA is a more rare green surface type. Bryce Garnett's number 1. You'll still have some overlap here. Bryce Garnett now rises to 1 with Rafael Campos. Kuchar's 3. Hubbard and Putnam rises to number 5. Hagee, Harrington, Clark, Walker, and Stewart are your top 10. Snedeker just outside the top 10. McNeely's, just outside the top 15. So the overlap there, you've got Mark Hubbard, Matt Kuchar, Campos, Wyndham Clark, Snedeker if you want to go one more and go to the top 11. So those are your good performing putters on POA. We'll remove that. And let's look at Jack Nicklaus. I think that's going to be a very, very telling filter or statistic to look at. So let's just look at strokes gained total for Jack Nicklaus courses. Chase Seifert is the number 1 player of the last 12 rounds on Jack Nicklaus designed courses. Chase Seifert's number 1. Sam Ryder, Brandon Hagee, Bryce Garnett, and Aaron Wise are your top 5. Hagee's kind of been popping on a couple things here. Jack Nicklaus and good form with the putter. It's interesting. Where's Brandon Hagee at on the betting board here? Brandon Hagee, 60-1. If we find some more good information, looks like I found myself another bet, which means avoid him at all costs because now he's just going to suck. Rounding out the top 10, Brendan Steele, Adam Hadwin, Ches Reavy, John and Roger Sloan are the top 10 in strokes gained total for the past 12 rounds on Jack Nicklaus courses. let's go to 36 just to see a longer timeline, more of a baseline. Hagee's number 1 now in Jack Nicklaus courses over the a longer term. Kuchar, Seifert, Gary Woodland pops, Brent Snedeker are your top 5. Then you go Sam Ryder, Brendan Steele, Ches Reavie, Bill Hawes, and Aaron Wise. So you're starting to see some common names, here. And again, the Jack Nicklaus courses here, you've got Valhalla, Concession, PJ West, PJ National, the Muirfield Village, which is Jack's tournament, and Glen Abbey. So interesting names that have popped up here on the Nicklaus courses. I'm hesitant to do the course length only because the altitude is going to throw that off. I'll use the over 7,400. More than likely, you'll want to use this one just because of to try to account for the altitude of the course. But let's just go by over 7,400 because it is still a fairly long course. On long courses, Griot is now your number 1 player. You got Kyle Stanley. Aaron Wise has now popped a couple of times. And he is sitting, we mentioned him earlier, he's at 25-1. Badley and Rogers are your top 5 on long courses for the last 36 rounds. Follow Campos, Bramlett, Garnett, Moore, and Woodland. And Woodland on long courses is got some very elite statistics here. First in tee to green, first off the tee, 7th in approach. So a lot to like there with Gary Woodland on longer courses. Again, I don't know how much this is going to play to 7,400 because of the altitude. I would imagine it's not. I'd imagine it's probably going to be closer to the 7,200. But let's see if we can't try to build a model here real quick, and then we'll start hitting in the DFS portion of the show. Let's just do a regular stat model here. I do want the last 24 rounds, and I've got this set for the WGC, so we're going to have to build a new one, and this is showing you why Fantasy National is just fantastic, because you can do your own custom model, and you can save all your models here, and there's no limit to them. So we're going to rename this. We're going to call this Old Greenwood. Save. Let's remove that. And again, because we don't have any course breakdown stuff, this is where I don't want to say we're flying at the seat of our pants, but this is where somebody or someone that really wants to dig into data, really try to find an angle, can really make a lot of hay. Now, if you choose the wrong angle, you're not going to do well, obviously. But if you do find the right angle for this course, you're going to make out like a bandit. And I'm going to try to find that for you this week. But new events and new courses, I love having exposure to that because I feel it plays to my strengths as somebody who really, really digs into the data, loves statistics, and doesn't have any prior knowledge that can cloud your judgment. You can just look at this from a purely objective standpoint. So let's try to build somewhat of a model for Old Greenwood. I do think off the tee is going to matter a little bit. From what I saw on Pro Visualizer, there looked to be some fairly narrow driving holes. The fairways are wide, but tree-lined driving windows. So I believe it's going to be imperative to drive the ball well, especially we've noted that there are 3 drivable par 4s, so you're going to want to have some off the tee. Anyone that's followed me for any kind of while knows that I heavily prefer iron players as opposed to putters. I'm only going to set it at 20%, and I'm much more comfortable in this setting lowering it because we just don't have a baseline. I'm only going to put around the green at 5. It might not matter. It might matter a lot. Don't know. Putting, always going to be important. I'll put that at 10%, like off the tee. That's 11, 10. Now let's try to figure out some specific stuff. And because this is a modified stable for scoring format, you're definitely going to want to look at who gives themselves the most opportunities for birdies and better. So you want opportunities, and you want birdies or better gained as well. So I'm going to put both of those at 15%. That might be a little too much, but because of the format, because it's not pure stroke play, it's going to reward guys more who who score the birdies and the eagles, as opposed to the guys who save their pars and struggle a little bit. It's much better to go eagle and bogey as opposed to birdie and par, if that makes sense for you. The more on per hole, how am I trying to phrase this? It's exponentially better to get an eagle as it is a birdie, whereas in stroke play it's only one shot better. In a modified stable for format, it's more than one shot better. It's more than 1 point better. I think an eagle is maybe 3 or 4 points. A birdie is 1 or maybe 2. So there's a lot more value to getting your eagles, and there's a whole lot more value to getting your birdies and pars. Hopefully that makes sense, isn't too obvious and whatnot. But you're really going to want to find the guys that go low, is what that's about. You're wanting the guys to go low. And this is going to show you that. Now that I'm looking at it, I might lower this to 10. I definitely want to keep birdies or better gained at 15%. You just want to find the guys that go low. Let's look at... These are fairly smaller greens, but not too... See, that's the thing. That's the beauty and the pain of doing a new tournament or a new venue, is that you just don't have any data to go on, so you don't know what works, what doesn't. Well, let's look at what I do want to know. Again, I don't think the proximities are going to be all that important. I might put this one at 5% just because the majority of the approach shots came from there. I'll do the par 4s of that length just because that's where the majority of them are, but I don't want to put a lot of percentage, and honestly, I want to put these at 0. I'm just trying to figure out what other stats that I want to work around here. Maybe bogey avoidance, because bogey avoidance, yes, that it's drop shots and stroke play, but you get minus points here. Maybe that is something we'll want to take a look at. Stroke gain par 4, maybe. Again, guys, the chat's open. What are you all thinking? Let me know. I'm by no means insinuating that I'm an expert, especially with this course. We'll put that there. Let's do fairways. Actually, you know what? I am going to remove the proximities and the specificity of the length of par 4. Let's do 10% on fairways. We've got 5% left here. I have fairways. Let's do greens. Let's just do greens. Make it easier. All right, so this is the first run at a model for Old Greenwood. Let's see what this comes up with. I have no idea if this is going to be right, but this is what my lean is, considering what Pro Visualizer was and what the wind's going to be like and so on. Number one is Ryan Armour for these percentages, using these statistics at these percentages. You got, well, it just skipped on me. Come on, if you're done loading. For the last 24 rounds, Ryan Armour, number one. Chez Reavie, number two. Then you have McNeely, Woodland. Keeps wanting to skip on me. Are you done loading now? Nope. Still trying to load stuff. Maybe one more time. How about that? You happy now? Armour at 1, Reavie at 2, McNeely 3, Woodland, Stewart, Grace, Wise, Kodaira, Hubbard, and Pat Perez are your top 10. Grillo just outside. Stanley Moore, Redmond. Mito Pereira is 18th. We've talked about him a lot. Snedeker popped on a couple of those models. He's 20th. Thomas Peters, 23rd. So there's a look at just a baseline model for Old Greenwood. And this is the past 24 rounds. Let's look at windy, just because Thursday's supposed to be so windy. Using the same percentages, and if the wind plays to what they think it's going to, and again, this looks like it's only going to apply to one day, but again, this is a Tuesday. We'll see what happens. I can already tell you, McNeely falls to 73rd, so apparently he's just awful in the wind. Ryan Moore is now number one. And Gary Woodland's still in the top 5. He's second. Grillo, Hogue, who was 11th, now is 4th. Ryder, Gellerman, Snedeker rises. Hadley, Troy Merritt, and Sean O'Hare are your top 10 in windy conditions. And that's just for a Thursday. Let's look at calm, because it was very benign the rest of the week. So let's look at the opposite of that. Let's look at calm. So anything other than Thursday, let's see who should be playing well. I can tell you now, Thomas Peters rose to 4th. McNeely's back up to 8th. Mito apparently is a win player. He's down to 78th. So in calm wins, you have Varner number 1, Hogue, Hubbard, Peters, Dahman are your top 5. Then you have Van Rooyen, Steele, McNeely, Chez Reavie, and Bryce Garnett are your top 10 on calm conditions. So I'm going to remove that. Let's look at POA. We looked at just the putting earlier, but let's look at just an overall view of players that play on POA for the last 24 rounds using these percentages. Number 1 is Adam Hadwin. It's done loading. We'll check. Adam Hadwin is number 1. Reavie is number 2. He's popped a little bit. Woodland at 3. Kuchar, Varner, Taylor, Nick Taylor, Vaughn Taylor, Cameron Percy, Eric Van Rooyen, and Doc Redman are your top 10. McNeely just outside at 11th. Thomas Peters at 14th. So there you go. There's some looks at an attempt at a model. I don't know if this is going to be right or wrong. This is the angle that I'm taking this week at the Barracuda. And I would love to hear your all's opinions, either in chat or if you're watching this after the fact, comment below. What are you thinking about for the Barracuda? But looking here at a base model, let's remove the POA. Let's just go back to the base model for the last 24 rounds and see, by this standard, who is value and who's not on the betting board. Right now it says Maverick McNeely is 3rd. He is the co-favorite, so that's not necessarily terrible value. Ryan Armour is number 1, and he is sitting at 40-1. So that by definition that is value. I wouldn't bet Ryan Armour. He's been playing well. I have nothing against him. He's been playing pretty darn well lately. He's not great around the green. He's very bad in the wind, so expect him to be bad on Thursday. But I mean, he's coming off 2 straight top 10s, a 5th and a 6th. The Barbasol was an alternate field event the week of the Open Championship. The 3M wasn't an alternate field event, but it wasn't the strongest field. Now, before that, it was a run of pretty bad stuff. But 8th was pretty much a alternate field event, the Palmetto. So he's played these alternate field events pretty darn well. So there is something to that. Let's see. Did he play in this last year? Barracuda? No. There is something I can show you. You can look at tournament history, but again, yep. So there you go. There's no tournament history because they've moved it to a new course. I think that's the reasoning. But there's no tournament history either. So we're setting some trends apparently this week. Ches Reavie. Ches Reavie's 40-1. I am much more comfortable betting Ches Reavie than Ryan Armour at 40-1. I like McNeely at 16. I like Woodland at 20-1. Brian Stewart, we didn't say his name. He's 40-1. Brandon Grace is 16 with McNeely. Aaron Wise, 25-1. Don't mind that one either. Pat Perez is 40-1. Don't mind that one. Bo Hogue popped a lot too on these data models. He's at 55-1. Interesting. Mito at 18. I wish he was a little bit higher than 18-1. I'm always a believer in Adam Shank. He sits at, I believe I mentioned him earlier. Shank, yeah, 45-1. Okay. Yeah, I don't think this, when I say value in an alternate field event, I'm not talking about your big bombs, but you're getting some pretty good prices on guys for the quality of level of the field, that they shouldn't be priced at what they are. I mean, the best example I can give you, I'm going to bet this Brandon Hagee at 60-1. I understand why he's in this field. He definitely doesn't qualify for the WGC, but you're going to tell me that there are 25 to 30 players better than Brandon Hagee in this field? I don't think there is. And that's what, the sports book is telling you. So I would definitely make a Brandon Hagee bet. I'm going to. I would advise you to do it. Even though he doesn't rate out too well on this base model. Where does he fall? Brandon Hagee. Now we're just going to have to search. Knowing my luck, he's way down. Yeah, 70th. Let's take a look at Brandon Hagee. He's not been good with his irons lately. Actually, he's never really been good with his irons. He's actually been better with them lately. He's terrible in the wind, so as long as he doesn't shoot himself out of the tournament on Thursday, he should be somewhat okay. The 3M was an atrocity. He's top 20 at the John Deere, 6th at the Rocket Mortgage, missed at the Travelers, missed at the Charles Schwab, the PGA. So, I mean, you've got... This is why I like betting a player like Brandon Hagee, especially in an alternate field event, because he's so volatile. He'll miss the cut, or he'll be get you a high finish, and that's what you're looking for. I mean, yes, it wasn't a wins, and that'll get you $0 on your win bet, but the fact that he's in contention in an alternate field event at 60-1, yeah, I mean, he actually gained on approach here. If he does that again, I'm telling you, I don't think there's 30 players that are better than Brandon Hagee. If he even stays neutral, if he stays 0 with the approach, then I think you're looking at a very, very, very good value. Now, that's an if. I understand that. He's not a failure on POA, and bent is the underlying surface type anyway. So the more I look at it, the more I think I shouldn't be so gung ho on Brandon Hagee, but I'm still going to probably place that bet. Satoshi Kodaira is another name. He's been playing fairly well lately. He had a 20th at the Barbasol, but you take away the last 3 of the last 4, he missed the cut. But before that, 36th and then 3 straight top 20s. Palmetto, another alternate field event, he was top 20. But the Byron Nelson, the Wells Fargo, so he's a streaky player is what I'm getting at. He's a streaky player. He has missed 3 of his last 4, but I am willing to bet that the irons will maybe not gain 6 strokes, but I don't think they are going to lose him strokes. Generally, he's been fairly okay with the irons. He's been okay with the putter. Kodaira is sitting at 80-1. If you're going that far down the leaderboard, I think you can do worse than Kodaira at 80-1. For example, you have Kevin Tway, Chesson Hadley at 80-1, Vaughn Taylor at 90-1. So yeah, if you're trying to hit a bomb, Kodaira might be it at 80-1. Let's just look at some 100-1s here real quick, and then we'll move to the DFS portion. Some names that maybe kind of stick out: Wyndham Clark. I'm gonna sort this by alphabetical. Wyndham Clark kind of popped on a couple models. He's 82nd in this overall one. Good on around the green, but not so much on other things. Where is he? Yeah. So wasn't great on other things. Some other names that might pop here. Chase Seifert. I like Chase Seifert. Where is he? Where did he fall in mine? 71st. So very good hitting fairways. Not great at avoiding bogeys. That's okay. Why don't we do that? Instead of sorting it by that, let's sort by birdies or better gained for the last 24 rounds. So your bet the guys that are best at going low is what I would say. You got Pat Perez, Aaron Wise, Griot, Kodaira, Woodland, McNeely, Scott Piercy, Campos, Rogers, and Scott Brown are your top 10. A lot of things are pointing to McNeely and Woodland. I know they're the shortest prices on the board, but still 16-1 for a co-favorite in McNeely. You've got Aaron Wise at 25, Woodland at 20-1, Pat Perez at 40. Those are still pretty good values, I would think, and those are probably 5 of the top 10 to 12 players in this field. Let's do birdies or better on Jack Nicklaus courses. Let's just see. Let's sort that and see what we get. See if there's some overlap or some interesting names that pop up here. Because I'm looking at the 100-1 plus, and it's not inspiring at all. Birdies are better on Jack Nicklaus courses. Brandon Hagee again, Woodland, Sam Ryder. Where's Sam Ryder on the old betting board? He's at 60-1. He's popped a couple times. Romero, there's Wyndham Clark again for 100-1. Aaron Wise, Snedeker, Hadwin, O'Hare, and Roger Sloan are your top 10 at birdies or better on Jack Nicklaus courses. I'm looking to see if I see Roger Sloan. I saw him earlier. Roger Sloan. Yep, 70-1. Okay. Hey, not terrible. Not terrible. There's the stat model for Jack Nicklaus. Let's just look at my rank for Jack Nicklaus courses. So here we've got the Jack Nicklaus, and sorted by my rank, or the model rank for the last 24 rounds. Brent Snedeker is number 1, and he sits at 35-1. Okay. What's Snedeker done lately? He's never been great off the tee. He's fine in the wind and in calm. POA is his best putting surface. He's been putting really well lately. He's in pretty good form. Look at this. Might be old Sned's time here at the Barracuda. The off the tee is a little bit worrying. The irons are whack-a-mole. They're volatile. He's very good around the green. I don't know. Maybe 35 to 1 on old Sneds isn't so bad. I might have talked myself into that one. Interesting. Chase Seifert again. I like Chase Seifert. Brent Steele. Brent Steele's been look at that, no stat worse than 38th. Brent Steele sits at, I saw him. Brent Steele, 55 to 1. Moly. What's he got going on here? Well, his last 5 tournaments, he's been dog shit. Clearly. He's great in the wing, he's great in calm. Hey, there you go. There's something for you. So, made the cut and then just had a nice old walk in the park on the weekend at the Open. 2 really bad, well, honestly, look at this. He missed the cut, but he was actually positive in strokes gained. That tells you something, that he wasn't really that. So, the Travelers, he just couldn't make a putt. And that's what cost him the cut, I imagine, right there. The U.S. Open, there's no shame in missing the cut. And he was actually positive in strokes gained. Did okay at the Memorial. I mean, he's made cuts a lot this year. Brent Steele at 55 to 1? That's a bet. That's a bet. Nope. Now I have for sure I have Cantley and Simpson at the WGC. It looks like I've got Hagee and Steele here at the Barracuda. Wow. All right. 55 to 1. Which means you should avoid those 4 players at all costs. Let's see. So there you go. There's some good info there. At least I hope there's good info. Let's look at this from a DFS tactics point, and then we'll wrap up the Barracuda here. My rank, Maverick McNeely, 91st, and here I was talking him up so much. This is just purely Jack Nicklaus courses. Sorry. Let's take off the Jack Nicklaus just for now. Because apparently Maverick McNeely has not played Jack Nicklaus courses very well. Something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind there. So he's 3rd in the overall rank, but he really falls off on Jack Nicklaus courses. That's something interesting to note. And again, I really would advise that if you're a Fantasy National member and you're going to be betting or DFS the Barracuda, come into this mixed model and start playing around with some Jack Nicklaus filters, some wind filters, so on and so forth. We're going to have to put an asterisk next to Maverick McNeely because he was pretty darn bad on Jack Nicklaus courses. I like Mito. I like Gary Woodland. I like Aaron Wise quite a bit for DFS purposes. Brent Snedeker, considering I've talked about putting a bet on him. I like Varner on calm conditions. That's what Friday, Saturday, and Sunday should be. So Varner's an idea. Pat Perez popped in a lot of those. Ches Reavie popped on a bunch of those models at 40 to 1. I like Ches. Let's see. I like Shank. Stewart popped. I'm not a big believer in Brian Stewart. For what it's worth, Richie Wierenski is your defending champion. If you're a believer in Kuchar, I would fade. I would stay away. Let's see. Redmond's okay. Hagee I like a lot. Garnett popped on a lot of those models. There's Kodaira. There's Steele. Steele's a steal. Wyndham Clark I like. This looks like it could set up pretty well for a balanced build here. Yeah, I see nothing down here that would excite me at all. I mean, nothing. I've got a few stars. Let's see. Let's check these ownership projections here. So right now, your 10K guys, the pivot on the 10K guys is Brandon Grace. He's at 10%. The others hovering in between 14 and 15%. I wouldn't mind playing Brandon Grace. I mean, he's number one in strokes gained total with no filters. One of the top 5 players in this field, I'd bet. I'm fine with Brandon Grace, especially if he's going to be a pivot. Going into the high, or just the full nines, Woodland's very chalky, which I'd eat that chalk. He's one of the best 5 players in this field. The Adam Hadwin is the pivot at 5%. You got Thomas Peters at 6.5%. I don't mind Thomas Peters at all. Now, if you're not worried about the travel from the Olympics to this, then go for it. I think it's a non-zero factor is the way I'll put that. Troy Merritt's at 7.5. The others are above 10, in between 10 and 13. Moving to the 8s, Taylor Pendrith. Oh, Richie Wierenski's your big time pivot. He's only at 1.5 projected ownership. I must have fibbed to you. He is not your defending champion. Where is he the defending champion of? Barracuda. Barbasol. Huh. They must not have the Barracuda in Fantasy National. I thought they would have. Well, okay. Alright. Wierenski's your big pivot here at 1.5%. Ches Reavie is the second chalkiest person at 19%. If he's going to be 19%, I'm okay with going other places. Pat Perez underneath him is 15%. I mean, that's still fairly chalky, but I mean, 20% projected or 19 projected ownership for Reavie. I don't know if I'm willing to eat that chalk. Let's see. Kuchar's only at 2.5%. So if you're a Kuch believer, he's at 2.5%. Adam Schenk is looks like your most, he's your most chalky player at 20.5%. That's probably chalk I'd be willing to eat in this field, just because there's not a lot to go at here. Moving into the high 7s, almost everybody is a pivot except for Hogue and Stanley. Those two are pretty chalky at 14 and 15%. There's Hogue. He's at 15. Stanley's at 14. Everybody else is under 9% in the high 7s. So in this range here. If I had to pick people out, I mean, Brandon Hagee's at 5%. I like him. That's really Doc Redman. I believe in the talent. He just hasn't played well. But he has winning pedigree. But to me, Hagee's the easy choice in this range. He's only at 5%. If you move to the low 7s, your overwhelming chalk here is Joseph Bramlett at 15%. You've got Kodaira at 10%. But, I mean, I've starred some people here. Hopefully you can take a look at Brendan Steele. Brendan Steele's at 7.5%. Sloan's at 7.5%. Garnett's at 4%. Wyndham Clark, 3.8%. So yeah, I think there's a lot of pivot here in the low 7s. Absolutely a lot of pivot in the low 7s. If you want to take your chalk, say on a Ches Reavie, and Adam Schenk, Woodland players up here, I think there's a lot of win equity, a lot of leverage down here in the low 7s. Move into the 6s. Michael Gellerman at 6,700 is where people are bottoming out. He's at 14% ownership. That's O'Hare. Where did Gellerman go? There he is. Yeah, he's 28th in my model. I can understand it, I guess. He's at 14%. Cameron Percy is at 12. 12.8, so 13%. Literally everybody else is under 7% in the 6K range. So, I mean, granted, there's not a lot of people probably playing Barracuda DFS, but if you are, hopefully that's giving you some ideas as to who you want to be targeting DFS wise, and hopefully I gave you some pretty good information for the outright betting, and just course knowledge overall. Whatever little knowledge I have, I'm trying to share it with you. So, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you didn't tune in for the live show, comment below. What are you looking at for the Barracuda? Do you normally play these alternate field events? Do you bet them? Do you play them DFS? If you do, what strategies tend to work for you? Do you have any information on on Old Greenwood or the Barracuda? Let me know. We'll always give you credit whenever there's good information to be had. If I use it, we'll definitely give you the credit for it. So, again, thanks for tuning in. This has been the 2021 Barracuda full show. Tune in tomorrow as we go deep into the DFS tactics portion for the WGC St. Jude. Take a look at the weather for Memphis, Tennessee, and prepare our lineups for the week. So until tomorrow, may all your bets be profitable.